Game on the line. One shot. Who would you rather have taking it, Iggy or Curry?
Of everyone on Golden State, open shot, fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Iguodala.
Andre Iguodala has just recently announced his retirement from the NBA. While the four-time NBA champion might be best remembered for his time as a role player on the Golden State Warriors, where he even won a Finals MVP, how good was prime Andre Iguodala actually? Before we take a look at how good Iggy was, it's important to determine when Iguodala's prime was. When Iggy was drafted, he joined a Philadelphia 76ers team being carried on their back by a declining Allen Iverson. Despite being a rookie, Iguodala was brought in as a starter straight away. He played all 82 games those first two seasons with the Sixers, and it's not surprising that Iverson leaving Philly led to Iguodala's stats improving significantly. In terms of numbers, you would have to say that Iguodala's prime was from 2006 to 2010 with the Sixers. In the 2007-8 season, Iguodala averaged 20 points per game along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. It was after this season that the Sixers awarded him with a massive $80 million deal. His role changed slightly the following season, becoming slightly more of a facilitator alongside Andre Miller, Thaddeus Young, Lou Williams, and Elton Brand. Despite that, Iguodala still led the team in points in both the regular season and their playoff series loss to the Orlando Magic. It was hoped at this point that Iggy could continue to improve and become an all-star caliber player, but things didn't work out perfectly. Despite this, Iguodala still finished the season with career highs in rebounds, assists, and blocks. He was a very good all-around player who managed to get to the All-Star game in the 2011-12 season. Iguodala was not exactly impressive on the stat sheets, but he was the best all-around player on a Sixers team who were a good team in the Eastern Conference. Iguodala helped Philly upset the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the playoffs, with Philly eventually losing to the Boston Celtics in the second round of the playoffs. So Iguodala was certainly a good player in his time with the Sixers, but was that really his prime? If you wanted to just take a look at the stats, then there is no doubt that Iguodala's prime was with the Philadelphia 76ers. But Iggy was doing this on a team that was never really that close to title contention. So was he really in his prime during his time with the Warriors? Well, to begin, many people forget how big of a signing Andre Iguodala was to the Golden State Warriors at the time. It was incredible because it looked like Iguodala had much better contract offers from teams that were a lot closer to winning a championship. Not just that, but Iguodala was going to be on the bench for a team who were not close to the NBA Finals when they signed him. But Iguodala impressed very early on, and he seemed to quickly recognize that his role needed to change. So his role did change, with Iguodala becoming a much better player defensively. The stats might not show it, but Iguodala was very often the man tasked with defending the opposing player's best forward. Despite being 6'6", he was able to guard some of the best opposition players and reduce the defensive load for his teammates like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Voters recognized his input on the Warriors team as Iguodala was voted to the NBA All-Defensive First Team in 2014 despite missing a stretch of the season with a hamstring injury. In the years following, Iguodala was coming off the bench for the Warriors, with his minutes increasing quite a bit in the playoffs. Depending on who you ask, this title-winning stretch could be seen as Iggy's prime because he was contributing to an NBA dynasty. Everyone remembers how in 2015 Iggy was able to slow LeBron James enough for the Warriors to win the NBA title, leading to Iguodala being named Finals MVP primarily for his defensive performances. He was still putting in some decent minutes, and even when the team signed Kevin Durant, he continued to play a similar role, still having a significant impact. And although it might not have been his statistical prime, Iguodala's time with the Warriors could definitely be considered his prime. No matter if you think that Iguodala's prime was in Philadelphia or Golden State, we know exactly how good he was in his prime. Andre Iguodala was never a player quite good enough to be the best player on a championship-winning team due to his limited offensive ability. At his prime, Iggy was likely good enough to be the second or third best player on a championship team, with one of the major criticisms of Iggy's game being that he was not necessarily elite at any particular skill. But this was also a good thing, because it highlights that Iguodala was a brilliant all-around player. He was a solid distributor who was often able to find the right pass. While a career high of 6.3 assists per game is not massively impressive, those numbers would have been boosted if the Sixers put some better shooters around him. While he was voted to the All-Defensive Second Team in 2012 with the Sixers, it didn't look like Iggy really ever excelled defensively. He was certainly better than the average defender with Philly, but a Philly career high in 2.1 steals shows that Iguodala wasn't necessarily elite at shutting down defenders at the time, and his lockdown ability seemed above average and nothing more. He was at a similar level with his scoring. With the Sixers, Iguodala averaged 20 points per game in the 2007-8 season. It seemed like Iggy would improve his scoring level a season later, but the numbers only went down from there. If you look at his scoring efficiency, it was always pretty solid, although he was never elite from beyond the arc. With the Sixers, he was consistently able to average more than 45% from the field, including 47% from the field in the 2008-9 season where he averaged 18.8 points per game, as well as averaging 35% from the three-point line. So when you think of Andre Iguodala, we must remember that he was a brilliant all-around player before going to the Warriors, and his role in numbers diminished after joining Golden State. Maybe if Iguodala had not stuck with the struggling Sixers for as long as he did, then he might have been a champion before ever going to Golden State. Especially considering he was the best player on the Sixers team, which went to Eastern Conference semifinals in 2012. So it's not crazy to say that if he was in a different team situation, Iggy could have been on a championship team before ever becoming a Warrior. There are, of course, some people who would say that Iguodala's actual prime was with the Warriors. He was brilliant with the Warriors, playing a very different role to the one he'd had in Philadelphia. That is a debatable take. However, one thing is for sure, Iguodala developed his defense massively in Golden State. With the Warriors, Iggy was an elite-level defender who was more than happy to put his pride aside and make an impact off the bench on a much better roster, alongside Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD. But it was not just his defense that improved when Iguodala went to the Warriors. He was a much more efficient scorer with the Warriors, including his career high in shooting from the field in the 2016-17 season where Iggy averaged a whopping 53% from the field. For a forward, that's an exceptional level and exactly what Steve Kerr would have been looking for. If Iguodala was not an efficient scorer and excellent team player, then Steve Kerr would have happily shipped him out. But there have been few players in NBA history to reinvent themselves like Iguodala did. Few NBA stars have the self-confidence to take a much smaller role, especially when they're still in their prime. Iggy was still in his prime and yet took a smaller role and excelled. In terms of championship winning bench options, there have not been many better. Overall, Iggy belongs in the category of very few guys, like Manu Ginobili, Robert Horry, and Kevin McHale as guys who helped to build a dynasty from the bench. There's been a lot of talk about whether Iggy should be in the Hall of Fame now that he is retired. I think when you talk about the impact that a single player had on multiple championship winning teams, Iguodala has to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame very soon. If you want to know how good Andre Iguodala was in his prime, then think about him as a close to all-star caliber player who could have chased individual awards but instead sacrificed those awards for team success. A brilliant NBA professional, Andre Iguodala has had a brilliant NBA career and deserves to enjoy his retirement. Thanks for watching SportsSphere, and we'll see you in the next video.